Yeah, you'll have to see the video. They did make a few jokes about you.
Oh God.
A few times. We threw a few things in there.
Looking to watch.
Yeah, not too bad, but we got you in there. So.
Yeah, they didn't do too bad with you.
I didn't do bad.
I did text and say to make sure that somebody said Anthony sucks.
Oh, there we go.
We do good.
You just said it now. Did you hear that, Anthony? We just started already. Look at that.
Oh, really?
I think Clinton said that Anthony is superior. I think that's what you said, isn't
That's not at all what I said.
No, I thought so. Okay.
That's not what I said. Maybe I said that he uses magical math. What's the math that he uses?
2 plus 2 is
Sacred geometry.
Sacred dominoes?
Sacred dominoes.
Mexican dominoes.
Yeah.
If you say 2 plus 2 is 12.
I think it was Galileo who said, math is the language of God. That's what Galileo said. Math and numbers, the language of God. Man. Are we ready to follow along, Mr. Shasta? Look at a few just nice little touches here. This is page 239. It's chapter 5. When he, is mistaken, right? And he's mistaken for corn. And then he just says, it's on the bottom of page 239. The bottom of page 239. It says, okay. He says, I simply daren't tell them that I'm not Prince Corin now, thought Shasta. I've heard all their plans. If they knew I wasn't one of themselves, they'd never let me out of this house alive. They'd be afraid I'd betray them to the Tizrot. They'd kill me. And if the real Corin turns up, it'll all come out, and they will. And then Lewis says, he had, you see, no idea of how noble and freeborn people behave. You notice how nicely Lewis balances the strengths and weaknesses of Shasta and Erebus? Right? Erebus sort of has her pride and things like that, but she also has a nobility, page 239, but she also has a nobility and dignity, right? Shasta is in some ways a little bit more honest and less prideful, but what is Shasta's problem? You understand what he's getting at here? Or at least his lack. What does Shasta not have? What's that? What do you think? He thinks that if they come back and discover he's not Corin, what does he think they'll do?
Oh, kill him.
Kill him, right? Says he had no idea of how noble and freeborn people behave. Ooh, that was a wild one.
Star Wars.
They all liked your Star Wars ending, Paula, to your...
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, they liked it.
They're lying.
They're lying. They did like, there we go. Dig in. So anyway, hey, I just got another article published in the new St. Austin Review.
I just got it in the
I got another review there. Book about Augustine. It's kind of interesting. So, okay, so again, he's growing up among slaves and stuff like that. He's learned to not trust anybody, basically. And he learns in some ways to be more trusting. Erebus needs to learn to be a bit more humble. Again, Lewis is just so perceptive on the good and bad, right? And so like some people have this idea. Some people the rich people are all virtuous. Well, that's not true, but it's also not true that poor people are all virtuous, right? Both people have strengths and weaknesses and things like that, and Lewis gets at that, right? Here's another thing. I wonder if any of you picked up on this. This could make a cool name for a work of art. It's on page 241, just a few pages ahead. It's just a very short little comment, the beginning of a paragraph. Shasta had never seen his own face in a looking glass. Can you imagine that? Never having actually seen your face in glass. Maybe he caught a glimpse of it in the water, right? Because he lived along the sea, so he probably would have caught a little bit. But what does that mean? Why would Lewis even mention that? He never saw himself in a looking glass. Sounds even better. Sounds like Alice. Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass is the sequel. Through the Looking Glass.
And what was that in the Metamorphosis? That the guy who kept looking at himself.
Good, Narcissus.
He was so Narcissus.
Yeah.
He was so in love with himself.
Good, he was
Tried to
obsessed.
look into that water.
Yeah.
In the mirror.
Kept trying to reach down and kiss it, and it would come up to him.
Clinton, Narcissus. Narcissus sounds almost the same.
Uh-oh. Oh, man. This is Get Clinton
Oh,
Day.
I'm
we're
just
back.
kidding, honey. I'm just kidding.
It's the whole time.
Anthony, you should be here. You're missing this. All the good stuff you're missing. It. But it is weird. So what does that tell us about Shasta? He's never seen himself in a looking glass. What does it suggest about his journey? Because it's a journey of self-discovery for him.
Well, that he came from nothing.
Yeah.
So he was more of a useful servant, indentured servant, maybe.
Good, yeah, more of that than a son.
Yeah, than a son.
So maybe he's learning
Maybe
something
he
about
has
his
the
worth.
means that maybe have here.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people didn't. I mean, they were very expensive way back when. Very few, even like in the Renaissance, it's like the rich people had a piece of lead with the glass against it or something. They could see, or just polishing the bronze or something, and it wasn't a very good image. Right? But here it's a journey. Who am I? What is his identity? He doesn't know who he is. At the beginning of the book, he learns that Arshish is not his father. So, I could be anyone, right? And who am I? I could be the son of the Tizrock, right? But it's going to be something much better than that. But it's just neat. It just adds a little touch to, again, the journey of self-discovery as he grows, right? The other thing that's really neat, you don't have to turn there, but as he's leaving, and he's talking to the real Corn, as he's leaving and trying to figure out what to say, finally Shasta says, well, you know what? You'll just have to tell them the truth once I'm safely away. And then Corn responds, what else did you think I'd be telling them? Asked the prince with a rather angry look. The difference? How Shasta thinks, well, I guess you'll just have to lie. And even though Corrin is, a bit of a bad boy, boxing and causing trouble and things like that, he has a noble, high-born understanding that, again, you hold to a code. Even if he punches everybody that he sees, you hold to a code. So there's lots of little touches throughout A Horse and His Boy like that. And you get touches like that with Erebus as she slowly needs to learn about herself. And in fact, we get one more thing like this. It's on page 244. It's just towards the beginning of chapter 6, where Shasta gets outside by the tombs, and he's afraid they might leave me behind. He needs Erebus and all the other ones. And again, he's afraid that he'll be abandoned. And look what Lewis comments. He says, in this idea about Erebus, Shasta was once more quite wrong, just like he'd been wrong about the Narnians. Erebus, was proud, and she could be hard enough, but she was as true as steel and would never have deserted a companion, whether she liked him or not. See? So she's got a little bit of vanity, but she's also got a kind of, integrity and stuff like that. Right? And just roughly speaking, Erebus would be more like an old Southerner, and Shasta would be more like a scrappy Yankee, okay? And they've got good sides, and they got to see both because I've lived in both places. Good side and bad side, right? Again, some of the old Southern aristocrats, you might see some pride there, but you'd also see a different kind of integrity that you didn't see up north. So very, very different. But anyway, gets in there. I'm a Southerner now, got to defend the South. Then he goes to the, and let's see by now, you picked up on how many times we hear stuff like this. When Shasta is in the tombs, and they're scared, the little beehive tombs, right? And he's sort of, and I don't know if you notice, Lewis says this again and again. Whenever there's a danger, you don't want your back to it. He says it almost every novel. These must be certain things that stuck in Lewis's head when he was a kid. But he's trying to decide where to go. And, he hears the jackals, the hyenas out there. But he's also heard that they're ghosts. And he's trying to decide what to do with it, right? And this is on page 246, about the middle of the page. It says, I suppose that if he had been an entirely sensible boy, he would have gone back through the tombs, nearer to the river, where there were houses and wild beasts, and would be less likely to come. But then there were, or he thought there were, the ghouls. To go back through the tombs would mean going past those dark openings in the tombs. And what might come out of them? It may have been silly, but Shasta felt he had rather risk the wild beasts. You think of how we've heard this distinction before? Something about different kinds of fear.
Oh, it's like in the Dawn Treader with
Good.
Eustace and Aslan.
Good. What did he say? That Eustace, when he was a dragon, right? He knew that a lion's pretty big, but a dragon can kill a lion. But he wasn't so much scared of the strength of the lion. What was he scared of?
Like His Majesty.
Good. His majesty. Good. The lion itself, its dignity, its majesty. And again, these are those two different kinds of fear. One is the fear of wild animals. The other is that word, the numinous. That something can be beautiful and terrible. He just comes back to it again and again. Of course, every time we see Aslan. When he finally meets Aslan near the end of the book, again, Lewis is going to use that phrase, he didn't realize something could be beautiful and terrible at the same time. So always that sense of awe. Right? And there he is, and the lion shows up and scares away the jackals, and then as long as he doesn't have to get those scarab beetles. Remember the mummy movies? The scarab beetles? Yeah, get it. Watch out. Are you scared of those? Oh, you didn't see the mummy? Not the original one from the 30s, but the new one. But the new one was like 15 years ago. Brendan Fraser, yeah. Yeah, there are these scarab beetles that go under your skin and stuff. Terrifying. Almost like an Indiana Jones guy. Sean Connery died.
Yeah.
Yes, that was sad.
Speaking of you, but I heard-
90 years old. Man, we should just skip class and do a James Bond marathon. He did like 7 movies or something. Just watch them all. I own them all somewhere, But and then he's comforted by the cat. And of course, we find out later the cat and the lion are all Aslan. He's there all the time, but we don't know it. He's in the back of all the stories and things like that. So anyway, well, let's jump ahead and see what happens to Erebus. And let's start on page 251. This is chapter 7. Maybe about a third of the way into chapter 7. Notice how well constructed this is. Okay, both Shasta and Erebus get separated, but it's a good thing they do because both of them hear what? What do they overhear? What important information does Erebus overhear? She will in a second. When she's in that secret meeting of the Tisroc and Rabadash and Arshi and Ahoshta, the Grand Vizier. You understand what she overhears is about to happen? It's something about to happen in Narnia? If you remember. Is everybody falling behind? You're getting tired. It's okay. She overhears that Rabadash is about to do a secret attack on Arkenland. So that's important. But do any of you understand what Shasta overheard that becomes really important? If the two of them did not put together what they heard, they couldn't have saved Narnia. Remember?
Yeah, it was about going down the secret trail.
Good.
They were talking about a way to get back to Narnia that was quicker and next to the river or creek or
Good.
whatever it was.
Good. And it's something you wouldn't even notice unless you just looked over that hill or whatever. Good. If they could have easily gone by it, they said, and you'd be in the desert for hundreds of miles. But if you know where it is, you can cut across and get there. But you see how those 2 bits of information, all the doubling that goes on in The Horse and His Boy, the Gemini that's apparently linked to Mercury, all of that comes together to save Narnia. What did you think? Did anybody get to meet Lazareline? The ultimate sorority girl? Were either of you two a sorority girl?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you were a big one? You were?
No, but I was one.
You were.
I was one.
Which one?
I was a sleazy GZ. I was a Delta Zeta.
Delta Zeta. We don't have that at HBU. I went to Colgate, with a lot of fraternities, and there was one fraternity called KDR, and the phrase was, "You can't spell kindergarten without KDR," and the other one was Delta Upsilon. You can't spell dumb without DU. Because you wouldn't say that. Those were the 2 football frats. You wouldn't say that to them. But anyway, then there was Fiji, the druggy frat. When the devil got tired of hell, he hung out on the 2nd floor of Fiji. Anyway, amazing. HBU is a tame place, I tell you. The wildest thing is getting MFAs together. That's about as wild as it gets. But so what did you think about Lazareline? Why do I say she's a sorority girl? What do I mean by that?
She just wasn't so.
Good.
And all the gold and
Good.
all the bling.
It's exactly, it's the bling, right? It's like, hey, Erebus says, close the curtain. You know, she's in one of those Carrie things.
Yeah.
Close the curtains or they'll see me. But what's good of having a new dress if nobody can see it? You know? And there's just a wonderful moment. I wonder if you've ever met anybody like this. She says to Erebus, don't worry, nobody will know about you. Nobody will know you're here. And this is how she says it. Okay, all of you, she's saying to her workers, and you doorkeeper, no one is to be let out of the house today. And anyone I catch talking about this young lady will be first beaten to death and then burned alive, and after that be kept on bread and water for 6 weeks. What is funny about what does that show about her?
She's dumb.
She's dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, she's shallow. She doesn't realize life and death issues. She's extremely spoiled, just like her spoiled monkey. Did any of you ever want to have a pet monkey?
Yeah. First time I ever had a Michael Jackson folder, and then Michael Jackson had a monkey. I wanted one.
I forgot he had a monkey. There we go. Man.
I had a Michael Jackson trapper keeper.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I did.
Could you stand up right now?
I was proud of
Did
it.
you have a jacket?
My trapper keeper did this.
Did you have a glove too?
It was a trifold.
Can you do the moonwalk for us?
I can't in my camping shoes, but I would. I can do the movie. Yes.
One thing I'll say about Michael Jackson, the great Fred Astaire made a movie called Royal Wedding where he dances on the ceiling. It's a really cool special effect. And Michael Jackson did his own version of that. The music video, I don't know, 30 years ago or something. But it was pretty good. I mean, he was a good dancer. He was strange, but good singer, but even more a good dancer. But anyway, again, nothing has consequences for Lazarine. Oh, whatever, death, life, it doesn't make a difference. There's one part where they're in great danger and they're sneaking around, and all of a sudden, Lazarine says, oh, this is so much fun. No, Lazarine, this is life or death for Erebus. And she just doesn't get it. She's not exactly evil, right? But her life is frivolous. And this is another job. This could be Erebus. This could have been Erebus if she married Ahoshta. Did anybody like that incredible line? We'll get there in a second, but she overhears the conversation between, again, Rabadash, the son, the Tizrock, may he live forever. Whenever you see the name Dr. Marcos, you now need to say, may he live forever. And Ahoshta. And Ahoshta is the Grand Vizier, right? I hope you've seen some Arabian Nights movies. If nothing else, Disney's Aladdin. The Grand Vizier is always the evil one that's sneaking up and stuff. Well, anyway, how does Ahoshta come across in that scene? You remember?
Is this the one that was her sort of fiance?
Right, this is what she was going to marry. This old guy with the monkey face. And what's he like? He's not only old and ugly, he's
He's a dumb guy.
he's what we would call a toady.
Yeah.
Licking the thing, and he gets kicked and says, thank you, sir. Please, sir, may I have another? That was Animal House. Remember that? And yet, at the same time, Ahoshta is sort of plotting behind the back of Rabadash with his father to make sure he gets killed. And there's a wonderful moment after we've seen this and we're so disgusted by Ahoshta. Then Lazarine says, oh, Erebus, now I hope you'll change your mind now that you see how important a person Ahoshta is. Saying, I'd rather marry my scullery maid. It's just the totally different perception of Lazarine. There's another part where I'll just show you because it's just amazing. It's on page 252, and again they're talking about all their plots to get her out. And Lazarine says, she says, and even if we were caught, and Arif says, all would be lost. Oh, darling, don't get so excited. I was going to say, even if we were caught, everyone would only say it was one of my mad jokes. I'm getting quite well known for them. Only the other day. Do listen, dear. This is frightfully funny. I meant all would be lost for me. Oh, yeah, I do see what you mean, darling. Again, we would say self-centered or egocentric. Egocentric, more like a child, right? Narcissistic, but almost more egocentric, a child than even Narcissus himself. She's just, and this is the kind of silliness. And there's a wonderful moment that says, for a second, Erebus was so disgusted by the silliness that Lazarine that she would almost prefer to spend time with Shasta. He starts to realize the value of that and the different kind of integrity that Shasta has. kind of neat. All right, let's look at the discussion that she overhears. It starts on page 256. It's chapter 8, in the house of the Tisroc. May he live forever. Actually, if you look one page before, at the very end of the previous chapter on 255, when we meet the Tisroc, everybody pick up what he looks like? Look how he's described. Second to last paragraph. It said, "Then came an old man, very fat, wearing a curious pointed cap, by which he immediately knew that he was the Tisroc. The least of the jewels with which he was covered was worth more than all the clothes and weapons of the Narnian lords put together. But he was so fat, and such a mass of frills and pleats and baubles and buttons and tassels and talismans, that Aravis couldn't help thinking the Narnian fashions, at any rate for men, looked nicer." By the way, let's see if anybody's prepared for class in the spring. If he only knew it, the cost of that cost more than the whole Shire put together. You have to be a real nerd. Do you know? Okay, he said if Bilbo only knew it, that thing that he had was more costly than the entire Shire put together.
The ring.
Not the ring. Do you know?
Oh,
Yeah, you got it. The mithril coat. Man, he's ready. That's a hard one. It's the mithril coat. It's the coat he wears. It's yeah. It's yeah. It was not invisible, but it's like mail. You know, mail that have the rings, and it's made out of mithril is true silver. It's like super hard but super light, and that's why when that ugly troll stabs him, he doesn't die because he's got the mithril coat. It's pretty good. See, you're getting ready already. It's good stuff. Do you know Lord of the Rings as well as Narnia, Amanda?
Who gave that thing to him? Was it that lady in the woods?
The elf.
What's her name? It wasn't the elf.
Who nails coming?
Well, no. The mithril coat is something that Bilbo took away from him when they killed Smaug, like at the very end of the Hobbit. But then, when Frodo and company visits the old Bilbo at Rivendell, Bilbo gives it to Frodo, and that's why Frodo has it.
She gave.
She gave
that little.
The light.
Oh, you're thinking of the light, yeah, the
glass thing.
the star glass. It's sometimes called.
So
Yeah.
who gave him the little thin jacket?
That little coat actually came from the Hobbit, from Smaug's
But when
treasures.
did he get it in the Lord of the Rings? I mean,
Oh, he already has it in the Lord of the Rings.
he already had
But
it.
when Frodo visits him, it's halfway through the Fellowship of the Ring when they get to what's it called, to Rivendell. Then the old Frodo gives it to Bilbo. The old Bilbo gives it to Frodo, and that's why he has it, which is kind of cool. That's why he survives. There's more to this Hobbit than meets the eye, Cool stuff. But anyway, now look at the way the Tisroc is described. Is he being? What would the word be? Well, not ageism. What is it if you make fun of people that are overweight? Is there an ism for that? I don't know what it is. Shapeism, bodyism. I don't know what the heck it is. Anyway, fatism. I don't know what it is. But anyway, but there's got to be a word for it, some ism. I don't know. Okay.
What's an ism for large people?
Yeah.
That's not an ism.
Like if you discriminate against people that are overweight. But I guess bodyism? Would it be bodyism? Shapeism? I don't know, body shape. But anyway, the reason I mentioned is he just making fun of heavy people? We actually meet a different heavy person in this book. And if you got far enough away. I'm making a point that there's, just like, remember, there's a big difference between the red and white of the White Witch and the red and the white of, in Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe? Santa Claus, right? Father Christmas. Here, there's two different people that are described as fat. One is the Tisroc, the other is King Lune. That's Cor and Corin's father. But what's different? What's the difference in their fatness, if you will? For the Tisroc, what is it sort of a sign of?
Like gluttony.
Good, like exactly gluttony. But he's just gluttony's right. He just devours everything. But what does it mean in King Lune? Nobility, good. And he's also described as being jolly. Well, in a sense, like Father Christmas, right? He's jolly. Oh, that's a good one, Henry VIII. Okay, as long as you weren't one of his wives. that jolliness, and anybody watching The Spanish Princess on not Showtime, Stars? It's pretty good. You might watch it because the sister of Henry VIII, who marries the King of Scotland, and is the grandmother of Mary Queen of Scots, is actually played by Lucy, the girl who played Lucy in Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, Georgia Henley, I think her name is. She's actually there. She's a bit older now, but she plays the roles. Yeah, you can still kind of tell her face. It's still pretty much the same face. But but again, see, there's a difference here. That again, sometimes the heaviness is a kind of jolliness, like a character out of Charles Dickens or something, jolly and full of life and all. But here it is, somebody that just keeps feeding himself and almost like a dragon that doesn't even take any joy in the jewels that he has. So Lewis is playing with different archetypes that way. Right? A character could have blonde hair in the sense that she's sort of innocent, or she could have blonde hair because she's a cold she-devil femme fatale, right? It can be the same thing, but it depends on the archetype that's being used. Right? Good stuff. Or having long hair, you could be, I don't know, you could be a knight, or I don't know. It's pretty cool. Blacksmith, I can see the blacksmith man. Maybe you're the what's that crazy show? The Witcher. The Witcher, man. Hey, you know what I started watching last night? The Mandalorian is back.
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
Oh,
it's pretty good.
So good.
I'm rewatching season 1.
Okay.
Oh,
So it gives
so
me
good.
at least 2 episodes to watch.
Oh,
If you read the books,
Oh, it's based on books? Oh.
So back in 2000, I would say
Tangent, folks.
2014, 15, in one of the books, it gives a hint, a clue to who it is.
Oh, at the end of the episode?
Yes.
Yeah, who that guy is. Somebody told me. I won't say. I think it is. But, Clinton, do you think that dragon thing, was that the same thing as you will experience a new level of pain as you are slowly digested over 1,000 years? Is that the same beast? I thought it was.
I thought it was.
They didn't say that, but
Apparently,
it's Tatooine, so.
It's Tatooine, but apparently it's not.
Oh, it's not?
Because it takes all the years to digest and blah, 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 blah. But it is, I thought it was at first.
I thought that mouth,
But yeah, but when it came out, they could remember in the other one, it was in the ground.
Yes, it was already in the ground.
Already in the ground,
Yeah.
and the mouth was open, like, permanent.
That is true. I guess it's different. You know what we're talking about? It's Return of the Jedi when they're taking care of Jabba the Hutt. They fall in and they're digested over 1,000 years.
I watched it. I watched it late. My son watched it on the drive up to the funeral. He watched it behind me, and I was pissed at him the entire time.
What? Because you wanted to watch it instead of drive?
He's like, "Oh, so good! Just say it, Dad, so good." And I was like, "I'm gonna reach back there and punch you."
That's right there. Kid, you're driving. I'm watching this.
Yeah, exactly. And then we weren't gonna go anywhere where I wasn't gonna watch it on my phone because I wasn't gonna mess myself over like that. So I waited, and then I watched it Monday night, and I just cranked the surround sound.
Oh, that's cool. It's good stuff. It's good stuff, man. Well, we'll see. But yeah, it was a good first episode. And Baby Yoda. Anyway, if you go to the first page of that chapter, about the third paragraph, we meet Rapidash. And if you remember, we said last time that Susan, rather vainly herself, fell for the tall, dark, handsome Rapidash. But when they went back to Calorman, that his true colors came out. And we saw how, in a sense, narcissistic he is. And she wants to leave, and they've escaped, and Rapidash is furious, and he says, "But I want her! I must have her! I shall die if I do not get her, false, proud, black-hearted daughter of a dog that she is! I cannot sleep, and my food has no savor, and my eyes are darkened because of her beauty. I must have the barbarian queen." Okay, if I say to you that Rapidash here is almost an embodiment of the id, would anybody know what I'm talking about? You know where that comes from? ID, id? You ever heard that?
Isn't like the ego, like the...
Okay, you're getting close.
egos?
It's three things. According to Freud, he's got id, ego, and superego.
Yeah.
Right? And what is the id? What part of that is that of us?
I remember a couple years ago.
Well, it sounds like the id. If you ever get a chance to see a great a classic sci-fi movie called Forbidden Planet, monsters from the id. The id is like the part of you that wants. I want this. I want this. I want an Oompa Loompa and I want it now. It's the part that devours and is just completely self-centered. And then the superego is the higher moral authority that's speaking in your brain. Okay, of course, Freud was an atheist, and this is his explanation for moral struggles without needing God or angels or devils or anything like that. So there's the id, and then there's the super, and then the ego is the one that mediates between the two, right? The ego is the reality check that holds you in, but he's almost like an embodiment of, I want this, I desire it. There's a really, really good word, old-fashioned word from the Latin, cupidity, right? And, of course, what's the root of that word that you'll recognize? What's the root of cupidity? Say it. Cupid. Who's Cupid? Yeah, well, angel.
The angel of love.
The cherub.
Good. He's the little cherub. He's the son of Aphrodite or Venus, and he shoots you with his little arrow, and you fall in love, right? And he is the same as Eros, which is where we get the word erotic. But erotic only suggests lust, whereas cupidity is any kind of gluttonous lust, whether you're desiring, sex or desiring food or money. Cupidity just sort of sucks everything in. The root of the love of money is the root of evil, and sometimes the word for love of money is cupidity, cupiditas, any kind of strong, lustful desire that just wants no matter what. And Rabidash is just embodying that perfectly, right? And they're deciding what to do, right? And he says, the next page, I desire and propose, O my father, said Rabidash, that you immediately call out your invisible armies and invade the thrice accursed land of Narnia and waste it with fire and sword and add it to your illimitable empires, killing their high king and all of his blood except the Queen Susan. For I must have her as my wife, though she shall learn a sharp lesson first. Now, is that a good way to win over the heart of a girl you want? I'm going to kill everybody in your family. That's just a good way to win her over, isn't it? I mean, Rabidash. Woo! What's that? Gets the point across, okay? Woo! So it's not love. It's even beyond simple lust of wanting physically. It's wanting to own, to possess, just because he can't have it, he wants to have it. Right? And we dive into this dark side here, and Edmund comes close to that with his gluttonous desire for Turkish delight, but not like this. Because remember, Rabidash is an adult character. I mean, he's fairly young. He might be 22, but he's not a kid. And so you see that side come out of him. And I love this. Go a few more paragraphs on when they're talking about Narnia as a free place. And look what the Tizrock says about it, about 3 paragraphs on. Most undoubtedly, said the Tizrock, these little barbarian countries that call themselves free, which is as much as to say idle, disordered, and unprofitable, are hateful to the gods and to all persons of discernment. So, from the point of view of the Calorments, and remember last class we talked about the East-West dichotomy, freedom versus tyranny, individual versus the mass, all of that sort of stuff. The only understanding that the Calorman Tizrock can have of free means what? What does freedom mean to him? He says, which means idle, disordered, and unprofitable. He has a very, very, very low view of human beings, that it's impossible. If we have freedom, we'll completely misuse it. We can't. We need to be absolutely controlled. Of course, sometimes when we act bad, we're going to put ourselves in a place where we need a tyrant. That's often how tyrants take over. When we've ceased to be morally self-regulating, a tyrant can take over, right? And so, again, they're using the same word, but in a very different way. And it's pretty scary. Any of you read 1984 in school? Undergrad?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but there's at the end it's called Principles of Newspeak. That's that language. And what the party has done is kind of reduced language, so you can't say many things. And sooner or later, they want to get it to a point where the only way you could use the word free is this dog is free from lice. That's the only way you could use it. Can you imagine? Just think about it. If we didn't have a word for freedom, could you imagine it? if we didn't have a word for individual or freedom or justice. I mean, it is, and by the way, again, this is something Michael Ward makes, that a lot is made about language in this book, talking about the poetry of the Narnians versus the prose of the Calormans. And Mercury is also the god of language. He's the bearer of the divine word. And so there's a lot more about language in this book than any of the other ones. So again, remember, the idea is that we're not necessarily going to see the influence of the planets. That's why nobody figured this out until Michael Ward. But we still feel it. We're without knowing it, we're moving into the realm of Mercury. We're understanding what mercurial means and all of those things. That's the idea. It's kind of neat. All right. Now, Calormen is much stronger right now. Why don't they attack Narnia? Well, the Tisroc is a little bit nervous to attack Narnia, right? A little bit farther down it says, "Know, O enlightened prince," said the Grand Vizier, the toady, "that until the year in which your exalted father began his salutary and unending reign," he's also what's the word I want, flatterer. Do you know what the word obsequious means? It's like bowing and scraping. I just hate when people, I hate to say this because some of you may like Papist restaurants. I should like them because it's owned by a Greek, but every time I go to a Papist restaurant, that's the way I feel about the waiters. I don't know if any of you felt that way. But I always feel like they're overly obsequious, and I just hate that. Just give me the food. And you know what I mean? Have you ever had a waiter like that? They keep saying, "Oh, I can do that for you. I can do that for you." And then when you ask them, what's in the food, they talk to you as if they were making the food. And then I know they're trained to do that, but maybe I'm just too much of a downheart American, and I hate any phoniness. And it's just like, shut up and give me the food, okay? I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that feels that way, but I feel that way. Anyway. But again, obsequious is overly bowing and scraping. And of course, what it means to call someone obsequious is that they're insincere. They're just doing it to get a tip. They don't really care about you. If they really were doing it because they cared about you, you would call them humble and what's the word I want? Courteous. But obsequious means they're doing it just to get something out of you.
True.
Right?
Waited
So anyway.
for 9 years.
What's that?
I was waiting for 9 years.
Uh-oh.
You definitely do it for the tip.
Oh, there we go. But I'm sure you wouldn't have gone overboard. You would have been friendly, but not obsequious.
For the right tip.
What's that? For the right tip. I'll do anything, man. Polish my head here, man. Polish my head. Did you say you went to the Renaissance Festival? So the shows are really good, but every so often, some of the shows, they spend more time trying to get money out of you than entertain you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God! I remember I never went again. This guy where he keeps saying, "If you raise enough money, I'm going to eat mud." It's like the mud eaters. You ever see those guys?
Mud show is called Give Us Tips Show.
Yeah, that's what it is. I only watched that once and forget. I'm out of here because they kept going, "Man, I'll eat mud if you eat." Oh, that's. I like Dead Bob. Dead Bob. Dead Bob. All right, I'm losing my mind. Okay. Now watch what happened. He says, until, and notice it's all coming together. Until that year, which your exalted father began a salutary and unending reign, the land of Narnia was covered with ice and snow, and was moreover ruled by a most powerful enchantress. In other words, the White Witch. Isn't it interesting that at the same time that the Tisroc began his rule is when Narnia was freed by Aslan and the 4 children. And now it's many years later during the Golden Age. Now, this I know very well, O loquacious vizier, answered the prince, Rabadash. But I know also that the enchantress is dead, and the ice and snow have vanished, so that Narnia is now wholesome, fruitful, and delicious. So he's saying, we can do it now. And this change, O most learned prince, has doubtless been brought to pass by the powerful incantations of those wicked persons who now call themselves kings and queens of Narnia. So the vizier is saying that this change in Narnia from perpetual winter to spring was brought about by the, from his point of view, evil magic of the 4 children. Look what Rabadash answered. I am rather of the opinion that it has come about by the alteration of the stars and the operation of natural causes. You understand the difference here? Difference in worldview? We'd say Rabadash wants to come up with a what to explain why Narnia is now freed from ice.
Conspiracy theory.
Good. Like a conspiracy, some kind of natural explanation. I want to come up with some natural materialist explanation, whereas Ahoshta understands, even though he's evil, he understands something spiritual happened, right? Something supernatural. Whereas Rabadash, in a sense, is a materialist or a natural. No, it had nothing to do with magic, and had nothing to do with supernatural or all any of that sort of stuff. It just was, a change. Right? It's a weird sound. Clinton, man, he's giving you a look.
It's like one of those things where like your computer tells you need an update.
Oh, those things, they're annoying. That look, did I tell you that look on Clinton's face, or eyes, I can't see your face, that it reminded me of a Far Side cartoon. You know the Far Side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's Plato, Aristotle, and then Gary Larson. I mean, the great, philosophers of life. But there's one scene where these people are in a raft, right? And they're clearly out in the middle of the ocean, right? And there's a look on this guy's face, right? And they've clearly drawn straws to see who will, jump overboard. And they've all drawn straws, and the caption says, "Come on, we drew straws, you drew the short one, you have to jump overboard." Okay, now, what's funny about that? Because when you look around the raft, everybody is looking at the guy that's scared, including the dog. And it was the Clinton looks. "Come on, man, jump overboard. I'm staying." I don't know why, but that look was just perfect. I love it, man. Gary Larson. Okay, so again, the young man is a materialist, we would say. No supernatural. Whereas the older guys who've had more wisdom and experience, even though they're bad guys, they recognize that there's some kind of power here that's supernatural. So look what his father says to him. "All this," said the Tizra, "is a question for the disputations of learned men. I will never believe that so great an alteration," you can do an accent there, "I'll be like Clinton, and the killing of the old enchantress were effected without the aid of strong magic. And such things are to be expected in that land, which is chiefly inhabited by demons in the shape of beasts that talk like men, and monsters that are half man and half beast. It is commonly reported that the High King of Narnia, whom may the gods utterly reject, is supported by a demon of hideous aspects and irresistible maleficence, who appears in the shape of a lion. Therefore the attacking of Narnia is dark and doubtful enterprise, and I am determined not to put my hand out farther than I can draw it back." So.
That was good.
Not too bad. So this would be like a pagan recognizing that there's some kind of magic or power in Christianity, not necessarily believing it, but where there might be like a philosopher who just wants a natural explanation for everything. Right? So again, it's just Lewis understands that there's not just two positions, this or that. There are a lot of people that recognize a supernatural realm, but are hanging out with the bad powers, let's say, right, and don't recognize the good powers. And do you know what the early pagans accused the Christians of? Two things. They accused them of cannibalism and incest. Can you guess why? What if they say they did? Well, first of all, what do Christians call other Christians? Brothers and sisters, right? So they use that to say incest. And what do Christians do that sounds like cannibalism? Eat the body and blood of Christ, right? So, and there was graffiti on the walls of Rome way back when of that, crazy sort of stuff. So different interpretations of things. But again, in some ways, the Narnians have more in common with the Tizrak than with Rabadash, who is skeptical about everything. Wow. And then again, I won't read it, but at the end of the chapter, after he leaves, again, the Tizrak's like, "Well, I have 16 other sons, and Rabadash was getting rather dangerous, as the way is." And I mean, if you know anything about the Ottoman Empire, they were continually killing each other within. Little civil wars with elder sons and younger sons killing each other and whatnot. And then they go off. So, yeah. Okay. What do we do? Keep moving. Try to get a specific passage that we can dig into. Okay, here's something important. Page 268. This is the very end of chapter 9. Any of you dress up for Halloween? Uh-oh. Really?
No, I just think about what y'all said last week.
Oh, what did you say? Oh,
Last week class.
that's right. That's right. Decided what Clinton would dress up as.
Yeah.
You'll have to watch it now.
Oh,
It's towards the end. I've forgotten that. Yeah. What Clinton did.
Yeah.
It was good.
I should get some headphones and listen to it now.
You have to do those with the big there.
Yeah, it's called Master Singers. I woke up like this.
Anyway, so they're running through the desert, and they've got to hurry up because there's a time limit. You know, if they get there too late, they won't be able to warn the Arkanlanders that Rapidash is doing this sneak attack. It's almost like a Pearl Harbor or something. It's a sneak attack. No declaration of war or anything. Just go in there. Very dishonorable. And they say, we've got to go faster. We've got to go faster. And Quinn is saying, we've got to go faster. And Bree says, Madam, I think I know how fast a horse can go and how fast he can't. And watch this. Again, it's on page 260, just at the end of the chapter. I think, ma'am, said Bree very crushingly, that I know a little more about campaigns and forced marches and what a horse can stand than you do. To this, Quinn made an answer, being, like most highly bred mares, a very nervous and gentle person who was easily put down. Right? So he's very nice. In reality, Lewis says, she was quite right. And if Bree had had a Tarkin on his back at that moment to make him go on, he would have found that he was good for several hours hard going. But one of the worst results of being a slave and being forced to do things is that when there is no one to force you anymore, you find you have almost lost the power of forcing yourself. Isn't that kind of true? We were talking about this before with dieting. I'm trying to remember what class I talked about. Okay, my first love was Nadia Comaneci. Paul, you remember? Nadia Comaneci was a Romanian
Yes, I do.
gymnast, right?
Yep.
The first person to get a perfect 10, and they gave her a 1.0 because they couldn't show 10 on the register, right? Because nobody got it before. But afterwards, like 10 years after, she got really, really heavy. And why did she get really, really heavy? And they made a little documentary. I remember seeing it back then. And again, she said that, remember, she's Romanian. This is, communist country before. And the coach never taught her how to diet and how to eat properly. He just put a padlock on the refrigerator. And so she never learned how. And once she was no longer under the rule of that person, she just got heavy because she didn't know how to regulate herself. Right? And is that not the danger? Who sometimes goes wild when they go to college? Yeah, people that have grown up in what kind of a home?
Haven't recovered from.
Oh, you haven't recovered, do you? From a strict home? Did any of you grow up in like a strict Christian home where they're like, don't do it. Everything is thou shalt not. Nothing is learn, how to have a certain view of yourself and all that. Yeah, moderation. And so sometimes, then they go wild. I mean, apparently still to today, there's very little alcoholism in France amongst the French. Why do you think that is? Very young. They start,
Dinner early.
they're drinking early and all that sort of stuff. And I remember one of my friends who's French. I remember once we were at something. It was a Chinese group, and it was afternoon, and they offered him some wine. And you know what he said? You do not drink wine before whatever he said, 5 o'clock. You give tea, but I mean, in other words, there's an understanding of how to use wine in the proper place. You have 2 glasses with dinner or whatever, and you learn how to handle it, right? How to. But here, they don't know. Bree can go faster, and it's a shame, right? That he could have gone faster if there was someone with a whip. And you would think when you're free, you would be able to be stronger and braver and faster. But sometimes we fall back. Right? So again, this is why you always got to be careful. You certainly want to give your kids strictures, rights, and wrongs, but don't crush them so much that as soon as they leave, they go wild. I told my kids, I said, when you reach a certain age, if you want to drink, you can, but your first drink needs to be at home. Okay, you come here and have it at home. You don't go to a bar or something like that. If you want to try it, what's that?
Did you have a drink with your kids?
Yeah, it's up there. Well, I still don't drink, but my kids sometimes have a glass of wine. And I said, if you want to have a glass of wine here, then you can do it. Don't take the mystique out of it, like it's somehow naughty and good because it's naughty, right? Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's just not. And again, I mean, we do that too much. We push down, and then, sometimes they do go kind of wild in college. And, wow. Okay, but again, it's an important sort of thing. Okay, now, wait a minute. And then, I'll just tell you, we'll get to the most important passage in a bit. There's that great scene when they're attacked by the lions again, right? And Bree is running super fast, galloping super fast, away. And does anybody remember what Shasta does? Yeah, he jumps off, kind of rolls off, jumps off to run back to help Erebus. And it knocked the wind out of him, and he didn't even know why he was doing it at first. There is a sort of inner nobility, an inner gentleman in there, right? And as we know, if a killer came in the room right now, Clinton would jump right in front of the two ladies, which he would. I think he would. And or if he was in a different mood, he'd push Robert in front of the two of you. And
I would say Chris.
Take the rookie, man. That's right. It sounds like you got a kind of sorry freshman class, first year class, so it's okay. But you're going to be the leader of the class when they're in my class.
It's hell week every day.
What's that?
It's hell week.
Every day, hell week. But you'll be the one to guide them in next year.
If I ever see him.
If you ever see Well,
Just keep it around.
HBU says they're going to be more serious. If you got that email from the Husky Strong, it's called, in the spring, we're still going to do hybrid. But they said now, if you're residential, you have to come once a week. The only way you can be fully remote is if you show some kind of proof that either you have immune problems or you're living with somebody that does, or you have some kind of learning disability. Now we'll see if they follow through on that. But they're going to really, because I think that grades are really falling. And I'm not having much problem in my class, but that's because at least 5 times a week I'm emailing. Like I email you guys, but the undergrads I email even more. It's like, have you watched the video yet? Because I can watch it. Did I watch the video? Excuse me, it says 15%. Watch the video, okay? Because we even know how much you've watched,
Part of the problem is too is that it's a private school, and so you're paying a lot of money to
Yeah.
go to a Zoom class.
Yeah.
And so.
It's like, why? Why are they doing that? They're just,
Right, so you need to be here.
yeah.
Seriously.
I mean.
Like I said, some people have reasons. So you may have your parents living with you that are diabetic or whatever. Maybe you're diabetic. And then that's, but so we'll see. It'd be interesting if they follow through on it, because we got to get people going. I don't know how many people are dropping.
I just was shocked just now to look down and look at how long we're out from Thanksgiving. Like
No, you're right. It is a long
Every
period.
other college is like that.
that is insane.
It typically doesn't feel that bad because it's always like classes typically end like that second week.
That's true. You're right. But now, yeah.
But now that it's like the week before Thanksgiving, that's
Yeah.
like an extra 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
You don't have too much. And like I said, and we don't have class the day before Thanksgiving because everything shuts down Wednesday at 2 or whatever, noon,
That
something.
just literally gave me a panicky feeling.
Well,
Okay, so we've got, we're doing today, then a week from today we'll finish The Magician's Nephew, and then the next week we'll do The Last Battle, right? Then the week after that,
I screwed up and started reading the last battle.
oh, well, it's okay, you'll get a little bit ahead. So we have this and 2 more classes. Next week, Magician's Nephew, the week after The Last Battle, then the next week is actually the day before Thanksgiving, and we don't have class because the school shuts down, and I can't remember specific, I think it's 2 o'clock. Is it 2 o'clock or?
25th at 1.
No, but
So we
well,
just
1 o'clock?
record- we
1
just
o'clock,
record
yeah.
our oral presentations?
No, and then the week after that Wednesday, the first week is when we're going to have the party at my house, and hopefully a potluck dinner if people would like to.
Okay, so you like
After Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Yeah.
after Thanksgiving, we'll do.
Yeah, that Wednesday after Thanksgiving.
you do potluck.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll do
We're
that.
going to do a potluck and then do our presentation.
And then do your presentations there, yeah. And like I said, I've got a really big den, and I've got a deck, and I've also got a very big dining room table so we can spread out stuff. And like I said, if you're, again, worried about the COVID or something, you can just do, again, you saw what Paula did, you saw what Anthony did, you can do something like, not to be exactly the same, but something like that. And you don't even necessarily have to film it. You can write it out and send that to me along with a PDF or something of the picture, we can do that.
Is it a certain time limit? I mean, time if it was a video, does it have to be?
Oh,
Hour and a half.
Yeah. It can be like 10 minutes or something. It doesn't have to be that long.
Major motion picture.
Yeah, like 10 minutes or something. Yeah, 10 minutes is fine.
Okay.
So you can do it.
discuss the points of 3 different books.
Yeah, and you don't have to cover all of the books that we cover. I mean, you could focus in on one or a couple of them, whatever you want to do. By the way, Clinton, did you get that thing I Facebook messaged to you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I wonder.
They're rebranding.
Yeah, I was like, you
Narnia.
should send that. I mean, that stuff you did is so cool. I don't know anything about it except what I sent you,
Thank you.
but I don't know. I thought that I could see that. There was something I saw online about they're trying to rebrand Narnia, with a different look or something. I should send it if I can find it again. Yeah,
No line.
get out there and stuff. But the ones that you did, I could see that in a book or something, that cover.
That's how it will be for me.
Clinton, can you recognize this line? I'm glad to see you are accustomed to worshiping things that fly. You ever seen Superman 2? The original Superman, Christopher Reeves?
Yeah.
Superman 2, the 3 big bad guys, they go into the White House.
We're gonna go there.
It's a great line. And he looks down at the seal of U.S. And then the president says, "Oh God," and he says, "No, Zod." Do you remember it? Those are the 3 great villains. Superman 2. Anyway, where was it? Okay. All right, we're... Okay, so anyway, he does that, and again, he shows that he does have an innate courage, right? And then have you actually read Pilgrim's Progress? Maybe you've heard it, or a storybook version, Pilgrim's Progress? A little bit, okay. But in Pilgrim's Progress and other books like that, it's really neat how Pilgrim's Progress, it's an allegory of the Christian life, and there's all these dangers, but always along the way are rest houses. We see this in Lord of the Rings. Rivendell is the last homely house in the West, or something like that. There's always places of rest and refreshment. And our pilgrims, our travelers, our blue-blooded pilgrims that are on the run, they stop at a place with, well, look at the name of the title. The title of the chapter is The Hermit of the Southern Marsh. And they find a place of refreshment, not just for the kids, but for the horses. Like it sounds like some of you know Wizard of Oz here. Where do they get a moment of refreshment? Yeah, when they get to the merry old land of Oz, before they meet the scary Oz, they're all scrubbed and brushed, and the hair. Remember the hair and all that sort of stuff, and put through things. The horse of a different color, and that's like an archetypal thing. It's like the house of respite where we can rest and refresh before we have to go on to the next leg of the journey. And then that happens in Narnia all the time, Lord of the Rings. I don't know if it happens in Harry Potter. They're too much in the same locale for it to happen as much in Harry. It's really more when you're on a long quest where you're going far away or something like that, instead of at the school. I mean, I guess they do travel a little bit. Anyway, the hermit himself is an archetype, a little bit like a Gandalf character, a wise old man. But he's also like, well, who's everybody's favorite saint that loves animals? Well, Paula, what saint loves animals? St. Francis of Assisi, okay? And he's a little bit of that character where he refers to the horses as his brothers and sisters and stuff. He's that character, the wise old man. Sean Connery used to play that character a lot. You watched it, right? Yeah, there we go. Sean Connery, man. What the heck? Wasn't that guy like a pretty heavy drinker, wild guy? He lives to 90? There we go. I don't know. Maybe he stopped later on, but hey, the biggest drinker and eater in the whole world was, what's his name, Winston Churchill, and he died at 92 or something like that. So, hey, who knows? Eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we die, or for tomorrow we diet. You've heard that one, right? For tomorrow we diet. He's thinking over there. Clinton's giving you the look. What's that look mean this time? Jump off the raft. Rookie, jump off the raft. There we we go. Oh man, I keep getting ready to turn my wallet over to Amanda. She still looks like a bandit. Bonnie and Clyde. It won't do you very good. I'm a professor. There's not much in there, but you know, it's good. Bonnie and Clyde. We'll call you Bonnie. Of course, they were pretty evil people, actually. But the there's a really good movie on Netflix called is it The Highwayman? It's the same Bonnie and Clyde story, but from the point of view of the Rangers. It's really good. Yeah, Kevin Costner. And yeah, it was really good. And we just see Bonnie and Clyde just in the background, and it's totally different than the movie. We're seeing it.
He has a talk with Clyde's dad in the mechanic shop.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "I'm gonna find him."
That's right. Yeah.
I'm gonna kill him.
Is it The Highwayman? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. What? It's on Netflix. It's really good. Kind of long.
Oh gosh, what's the other guy's name?
Is it a series or?
No, it's a movie. It's
Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah. And it's the same story. If you've ever seen Bonnie and Clyde, it's a true story, but from the point of view of the two Rangers that took him down, that followed him, and one of them was retired. And we also get to meet. It's not Ma Richards, but some semi-corrupt. Was it Kathy Bates? It was somebody like Kathy Bates was like the corrupt governor, Ma governor, and all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, she was very good, and I think she's a real person too. It's worth watching. I mean, if you like that stuff, it's a little bit slow, but I thought it was very good.
She was trying to get reelected.
Yeah, it's always an election year, right? Anyway, while they're resting and relaxing at there, poor Shasta has to keep going and going and going and going on and on and on. Now, one more thing before we get to Shasta, on page 275, it's almost the end of chapter 10. One more thing about Bree, and then we'll focus on maybe, arguably, the greatest moment in all of Narnia when he meets Aslan. It's one of the greatest things in all 7 books. But okay, page 275, like I said, towards the end, they're there and they're at that rest place, and Shasta is Bree is talking to Quinn and Erebus, and Bree is just humiliated because he ran away and didn't save Erebus when Shasta, this little foal, ran back. Okay, and look at this thing. He says, after all, he says, I shall go back to Calormen. That's what Bree says, the horse. What? Said Erebus? Back to slavery? Why would you want to go back? Yes, slavery is all I'm fit for. How can I ever show my face among the free horses of Narnia? I who left a mare and a girl and a boy to be eaten by lions while I galloped all I could do. I galloped all I could to save my own wretched skin. I'm saving me ass! Clinton, you get that? I'm saving me ass! You know what that is?
Yes, I do.
That's from Shrek.
That's Shrek, my friend.
One of the funniest double meanings.
To save my ass!
It's one of the funniest. Anyway, so slavery is all I'm fit for. It says, we all ran as hard as we could, said Quinn, the other horse, always the sensible mare. Shasta didn't. At least he ran in the right direction, ran back, and that is what shames me most of all. I, who called myself a war horse and boasted of 100 fights, to be beaten by a little human boy, a child, a mere foal, who had never held a sword nor had any good nurture or example in his life. I know, said Erebus. I felt just the same. Shasta was marvelous. I'm just as bad as you, Bree. I've been snubbing him and looking down on him ever since you met us, and now he turns out to be the best of us all. But I think it would be better to stay and say we're sorry than to go back to Calormen. It's all very well for you, said Bree. You haven't disgraced yourself, but I've lost everything. Okay, now, in one sense, both Bree and Erebus, the two prideful, vain ones, in one way, they're both showing humility. But what's the difference? There's an important spiritual point. Go ahead.
One's accepting.
Good. One's accepting. Which one's accepting it?
Erebus.
Erebus, right? I'm humble. I'm accepting it. I'm ready to say I'm sorry and go to the land of Narnia. But how is Bree's reaction different?
More of a martyr.
Good, more of a martyr. Okay, good. Works righteousness or something. I mean, haven't you ever seen a kind of prideful humility? I mean, it's kind of weird, but there are a lot of people who think that they're too good for God. But there are also a lot of people who think they're too bad for God. You know what I mean by that? And it's like, oh, really? So you're so bad, God's grace can't cover that? I mean, there's almost a kind of strange, twisted pride in I'm so bad and horrible and whatnot that I can never be forgiven. And some people can almost take pride in that and refuse to change. Right? So these are horses, but they're people. We all have that thing. And while he's complaining, the hermit sneaks up behind him. He makes no tread, just like when Aslan is walking behind Jill before he blows her into Narnia, so quietly. "My good horse," said the hermit, who had approached them unnoticed because his bare feet made so little noise on that sweet dewy grass. "My good horse, you've lost nothing but your self-conceit. No, no, cousin, don't put back your ears and shake your mane at me. If you are really so humbled as you sounded a minute ago, you must learn to listen to sense. You're not quite the great horse you had come to think from living among poor dumb horses. Of course you were braver and cleverer than them. You could hardly help being that." That's like any of you going to A&M. I mean, you can't help being the top of your... I haven't told an Aggie joke in a while. Anyway, he says, "Of course you were braver and cleverer than them. You could hardly help being that. It doesn't follow that you'll be anyone very special in Narnia. But as long as you know you're nobody very special, you'll be a very decent sort of horse, on the whole, and taking one thing with another. And now, if you and my other four-footed cousin will come round to the kitchen door, we'll see about the other half of that mash." Anybody remember something Jesus said? No man is greater than John, but you remember? So by John the Baptist. No man who's lived is greater than John, but... Okay, no man born was greater than John, but the least... because the least in the... Remember the whole thing? Almost got it. You've got the least in the kingdom of God is greater than him. Right? And of course he will eventually be in the kingdom of God. But what he was saying is again, it's not all about merit once we get to heaven. It's about grace and stuff like that. And I mean, maybe sometimes the Bible talks about crowns, especially if you read Dante's Paradiso. But the point is that his self-condemnation is actually a kind of pride. I'm too bad for anything. And you hold on to that and don't let it go. He doesn't want to let go of the fact. Maybe he's not such a great horse. He can actually make a mistake and just own up to it and then move on. I mean, have you ever seen people just overdo it when they make a mistake so that they drive you crazy? They seem like they're apologizing, but they're driving. Okay, I heard it. Okay, I heard it. Okay, don't go on and on and on and on. So again, we'll see. We're going to see one more thing about Bree a little bit later. But now let's turn to the most amazing part. And that is, it starts on page 280, towards the last several pages of the chapter. The unwelcome fellow traveler. Of course, who is the unwelcome fellow traveler? It is Aslan, okay? We have not seen Aslan. Well, we'll find out later that we actually have seen him again and again. We didn't realize it till now. In one sense, this is the first time he appears. And Shasta is all alone, and it's kind of misty and dark, and he doesn't know where he is, and he now has a dumb horse, and he doesn't know how to do it, because he's used to Bree doing what, and so he's just stuck. And all of a sudden, as he sits there, he starts to have a pity party. How do you do that with the world's smallest violin? What is it? Is it that way? Yeah, the pity party, right? Oh, woe is me! And he goes on, he's weeping, feeling sorry for himself. Then suddenly, and being very tired and having nothing inside him, he felt so sorry for himself that the tears rolled down his cheeks. What put a stop to all this was a sudden fright. Shasta discovered that someone or somebody was walking beside him. It was pitch dark, and he could see nothing, and the thing or person was going so quietly that he could hardly hear any footfalls. What he could hear was breathing. His invisible companion seemed to breathe on a very large scale. Shasta, I am your father. No, that's not what's going to happen. Numbers there for a second. Okay. You didn't see that coming. Okay. Here we go.
I'm actually a lion as well. Simba, I mean, Simba.
What? Somebody showed me something on. So one of my students yesterday showed me something on Facebook where somebody's trying to get Darth Vader to be the speaker for the GPS, and it's hysterical. I don't know if you can find it. If you can search it somehow, it was so funny.
Those commercials are the best.
Oh, it was a commercial. Oh, it was just so funny.
Turn right.
Yeah. Roundabout. No, roundabout. 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 That was a commercial. Okay, I didn't realize it was a commercial. Anyway.
The Yoda one's even better.
Oh, that's great.
Because you just see the hand. Like,
why doesn't...
The recording,
oh,
the guys in the studio, and like the window into where the mic is, and you just see Yoda's hand.
Great! I love that guy. Why doesn't somebody... Can you buy that? Can you buy a GPS in some strange voice?
You used to, the ones that you installed. The
Yeah.
Ones,
Oh, only those did it. Okay.
The ones that you used to be able to install that would, the ones that were like portable. You could,
yeah.
The Garmin's you could pay, and they would send you an SD. And on the SD card, it would have whoever's voice you pick. So you could have Darth Vader.
That would be so cool. Like Gandalf or something?
Patrick Stewart.
A
bunch of those kind of people.
So
Even the Cookie Monster.
So you go to the
That would be awesome.
Your voice, you want to Waze.
Yeah.
Through Pandora, they're talking about the same people.
Yeah.
That's
And so
wild.
You can do that. Or you can even record your own voice. So you wanted, like, come on, down, turn left.
Yeah, see?
Like you meant actually. You can,
I didn't say that.
One of the kids, so the guy that I paint a lot of, his name is Simba. And so Simba is from Cambina, Angola, Africa. And he talks like this all the time.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really his voice.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were driving to lunch on one of the workshop days. And he was like, everyone can fit in my car. I will drive. And we're like, okay, Simba. So we get in Simba's car, he's driving. And he's following the GPS. And it tells him to turn around. But it tells him after he passed it.
Oh, good.
And he's like, all the time, this GPS is lying to me. It's telling me today. Why can't it just tell me, Simba, turn around. Simba, turn around. And so that got stuck like an earwig.
Is his name Simba?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
He's like, Simba, turn around, turn around. And I was like, and he has not lost the fact that his name is Simba.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
he's from Africa.
That's
There's
great.
a huge movie with Simba in it, and he knows that. And so, but we're driving later on that day, and he's like driving past it, and I go, Simba, turn around.
See, I'm going to make money by selling a special GPS for young men who need to prepare for married life. And then the GPS would say things like, hey, watch out for that car over there. Did you miss the thing? Paul, you're not like that, are
You're
you?
falling asleep. You're falling asleep.
Are you a good, what's the
No,
word?
I'm not.
A co-pilot? Are you a good co-pilot, or do you drive your husband crazy?
No, I don't drive him crazy, but he's never really paying attention.
Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. See, that guy's like that. Watch out, watch out.
That was our accident, and then I'm like, you sure you don't want to drive?
I get that. I get that. You're falling asleep. Do you want me to drive? No.
No.
If I wanted you to drive, I would have already pulled over.
Oh, man. That's funny stuff. Anyway, okay, so it says, and Shasta got the impression that it was a very large creature. And he had come to notice this breathing so gradually that he had really no idea how long it had been there. It was a horrible shock. Maybe this is the first time that Shasta is quiet enough to hear. I mean, sometimes we don't hear from God because we're just so darn distracted doing 100,000 things. It's very hard in the modern world to just find quiet. Right? There's always distractions. I find it very hard to hear the still small voice. Right?
For me, I think it's the absence of asking.
That's interesting.
Right? A lot of people are so, I have to do this, I need to do that,
Good.
I have to do this, and there's not enough asking.
Hmm.
Right? Even though we've all heard the sermons of those that have like the really long prayers, and they're always
Right.
praying for this, they're constantly praying for it, they never stop praying for it. But I've always been that person that my prayer is always like, you know what, I really don't want to bother you with that.
No, that's true.
I have that mentality where I'm like, there's so many people calling out to you right now in this second that I'm not going to bother you with where the hell are my keys. Right?
It's true.
Lord, please help me find my keys. I
I
feel
mean,
like a jackass doing that.
I mean, you'll actually find that Lewis actually gives an answer to that, because in the next book, Magician's Nephew, the kids are riding in the back of a flying horse, and they get someplace, and there's no food. All there is grass, and the horse can eat the grass, but the kids can't. And then you should have asked, and then the kid's going to ask the horse, but don't you think, Aslan would have given it to us and we need it? And the horse says, well, I don't know, but somehow I think he likes to be asked. And he does tell us to ask, right? James, you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and you don't have because you ask with wrong motive. Sometimes that happens. But that is a good point. I mean, give us this day our daily bread. Our prayers should not all be spiritual. Part of praying is petitions and asking.
So for me, I pray, 3 times a day because I say grace.
Okay.
But it's automatic. It's so
right.
I do it, and it's it's a discipline that I have. But in that grace, I often forget that I can expand.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. You pray for other things. It's true.
I can add to it.
Yeah.
And I constantly get nudged by my wife or kids
yeah.
at the table, and they're like, and
okay, is that
and
the right
I'm
way?
like, and Houston have a good choir concert, and so and so.
Come on.
Nicholas do well on his math exam. I don't ever. I try not to ask too much.
No, you're right. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to bother God. I mean, quite literally.
Honestly,
No,
I mean, sometimes I'm worried he's going to turn my channel off because it's a constant prayer. Oh, here she is again.
God doesn't give more. That's right.
But it's crapola.
Again. But
Why the same stuff again?
He does want us to ask. I mean, it's crazy, but it says it again and again.
Absolutely.
Let your petitions be known.
Put so many hidden messages in your painting.
That's right. Ask for grace, or to be kind to your family again.
Give me patience, right?
No, you can't. I've discovered for me, I can't pray for patience because then God gives me more things to
Then be patient about. That's right. So that's
I
crazy.
had to reword.
Reword it. I didn't really mean it. Okay. God, Clinton's in my class. I've learned enough patience. Leave me alone, right? That kind of stuff. So, amen for this exit. I love it. But again, sometimes we just don't ask, right? It darted into his mind that he had heard long ago that there were giants in these northern countries. He bit his lip in terror, but now that he really had something to cry about, he stopped crying. That happened to you? When you suddenly have something to really cry about, your self-pity ends. When there's something really bad out there, it kind of wakes us up. And maybe this whole COVID has woken us up as a country. The thing, unless it was a person, went on beside him, right? And they keep going, and they keep going. And again, at first, he's the unwelcome fellow traveler. He doesn't want him there, right? Remember, Lewis was the most reluctant convert in all England, dragged kicking and screaming into the kingdom of God, looking left and right for a way to escape. Lewis just wanted to be left alone. And so finally, Shasta says, "Who are you?" "One who has waited long for you to speak." Are you a giant?" "You might call me a giant, but I am not like the creatures you call giants." I can't see you at all. You're not something dead, are you? Oh, please, do go away. What harm have I ever done you? Oh, I am the unluckiest person in the whole world. Once more he felt the warm breath of the thing on his hand and face. "There," it said. "That is not the breath of a ghost." We've seen Aslan say that before. We see Jesus say it. I'm real, right? I'm not a ghost. As I said, the disciples didn't make up the resurrection because the disciples thought it was a ghost. Jesus had to tell them again, "No, I'm not a ghost. Look, give me something to eat. I'll prove it to you. I'm not a ghost." Right? Yeah, that's right. The Doubting Thomas. Wait, we're going to meet Doubting Thomas in just a moment. Okay. Tell me your sorrows. And he goes on to tell his sorrows. Shasta was a little reassured by the breath, so he told him he'd never known his real father or mother. He had been brought up sternly by the fishermen. Then he told the story of his escape, how they were chased by lions and forced to swim for their lives, and of all their dangers in Tashbaan, and about his night among the tombs, and how the beasts howled at him out of the desert. And he told about the heat and the thirst of their desert journey, and how they were almost at their goal when another lion chased them and wounded Erebus, and also how very long it was since he had anything to eat. He's memorized his troubles. Remember that scene with the still small voice? God says, Elijah, why are you here? And Elijah's like, oh, well, I fought your priest, and this happened, and then I was chased away. And then a little bit later, God says, tell me what's wrong. And he says exactly the same thing. Some people call it memorizing your troubles. We just say it over and over again. And look at Aslan's response. I do not call you unfortunate. Don't you think it was bad luck to meet so many lions? There was only one lion. What on earth do you mean? I just told you there were at least two that first night. There was only one, but he was swift of foot. That's one of my favorite. I don't even know why. It gives me a numinous feeling every time I think of it. There was only one lion, but he was swift of foot. Dashing around everywhere. Right? Man. How do you know? I was the lion. I was the lion who forced you to join with Erebus. That's why it was there, because the four needed to be together to survive on their quest. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept. I was the lion who gave the horses the new strength of fear for the last mile so that you should reach King Loon in time. That's why. There was reasons for it. We didn't understand them. And I was the lion you do not remember, who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat, wakeful at midnight, to receive you. Wow. Later on, he's at the back of all this. I really believe that all Christians, especially if you're somebody who became a Christian a little bit later in life, should sit down and write out their testimony, at least in their mind, and give their testimony. Because when you do that, when you look backwards, which is of course what you do, what do they call it, hindsight, you look backward to write your testimony, what will you almost always discover? Like maybe when you were very young. When you really look back at your whole story. Yeah. And sometimes it was the presence of God even before. Yeah, you weren't even looking for him. You didn't even know you were looking for him. And the presence of God was there. I remember I grew up sort of Greek Orthodox church, and the gospel wasn't spread that much. But my father owned a gas station, and there was this black preacher named John Thomas. You would love this guy. And my father was a pretty good guy. And this is the black preacher that everything was dumped on him. His wife drove him crazy. He couldn't pay anything, so my father would fix all of his vans, and he couldn't pay, so he would let him come to our house and paint our house or paint our pool, which I was really impressed they would do that. Of course, today they'd probably arrest him for doing that. But it's like, let's do that. And so I always remember he would come and paint the house, and he would put up the boom box, as we used to call it, and play gospel music. And I never, in Greek churches, you don't even hear Amazing Grace. This is what you're in a Greek church. You're chanting through your nose, like Byzantine chants. So I never heard gospel music. And I still remember listening to it, and it was like something special about it. And by the way, when I was about 20, I went and preached at his church. And I got all those amens and stuff, so it was pretty cool. And my father, he's not a believer yet. He's a good man. He's not a believer. And when I went there, and I didn't ask for any money, but after I preached for like an hour, he passed around the hat, and it was like $150. And my father's like, "We're going on the road, man." He'd never seen that before. We're going on the road. I said, "Dad," and like almost everything was singles. People putting singles and stuff like that. But he always remember. If you tell him that, he always remembers that. But anyway, another thing I remember, and I don't remember. My parents told me. Does anybody know what Atlantic City is? That's the boardwalk, right? Before they had the gambling. When I was a kid, we'd go along the boardwalk, and there was the rides and stuff. And apparently, I was walking along the boardwalk. I was young. I don't remember this. And we're walking with my grandmother, and I noticed I was a very, very sensitive child, and I said, "Yaya," that's grandmother. "Yaya," like abuela. "Yaya, what's wrong? You look so sad." She said, "Oh, Louis, I lost my earrings. Had like some very special earring that had fallen off. And she tells me, I don't remember, that as we continued to walk, she looked down at me. She said, Louis, what are you doing? And I guess I was doing like this. I'm praying you'll find your earring. And like a few minutes later, it was just there. I mean, you know what a boardwalk's like, everything falls through. And it was just there, miraculous. So I must have had connections back then. I don't remember that, right? But I look back and I look at all these things. And that's what you need to do. Because again, a lot of times God was looking for you before you were looking for me. You would not have called to me if I had not called to you. And so we need to see that with the long view and things like that. And that's what Shasta realizes. He was always there. Didn't know his name, wasn't looking for him, had no concept of it, and yet he was there, watching over, like in the book of Esther we said before. Did we say that before? That the book of Esther is unique in the Bible? It's the only book in the Bible that never mentions what word? God. The name of God is never, not even God, forget about Yahweh, not even just regular God, never mentioned. And yet, he's behind everything that happens in the book of Esther. That's, again, to me, this is like the book of Esther. So he says, then it was you who wounded Aravis? It was I. But what for? Child, I am telling you your story, not hers. I tell no one any story but his own. When did one of the disciples say to Jesus, hey, what about him? Remember? You remember?
Yeah, it's like Matthew, do not worry about, or is it Peter or Matthew? It's like, do not worry about him.
Good. It's Peter.
If
Good.
He lives until I return.
Yeah,
Good. You know where that is in the Bible? What gospel?
It had the book of John, probably.
What's that?
The book of John.
It is the book of John. It's the last chapter of John. The one that you mentioned before, Amanda, about the charcoal fire. When he asks him 3 times, do you love me? Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, then he prophesies his death. You know, you will be tied up and taken where you do not want to go. And then he points to John, the disciple whom God, Jesus loved. What about him? And Lupe just said it. If it is my will, you know, again, you follow me. Nobody's told their own, except, your story. I'm not telling you other people's story, right?
Work out your own salvation.
Yeah, fear and trembling, right? Who are you? Myself. This is probably the only time in Narnia where Lewis gives us a clear reference to what? Think about it. Well, I am, but a little more, because he does say I am a couple other times. But we had just a little more than that. What do we get? What Christian doctrine that it's very hard to put into this story? How many times does he say myself? It's the Trinity, right? And just look at it. The first one, said the voice very deep and low so that the earth shook. That would be God the Father, the great I am. Then the second was loud and clear and gay. That would be, the incarnate Son, Jesus. And then, most obvious, whispered so softly you could hardly hear it, and yet it seemed to come from all around you as if the leaves rustled with it. That would be the Holy Spirit. And remember what Jesus says to Nicodemus in John chapter 3? Right? You don't see the wind, right? It comes and goes. You don't see where it goes, but you're going to see its effects. Right? You know where the wind is. Like when they make movies about the invisible man. You can tell where he is because of things that move, but you can't see him. Right? So this is probably the only place he found a way to sort of get, because, we've got Aslan and we've got the Emperor Beyond the Sea, but it's kind of hard. And here's the one place where it all comes together, sort of Trinity. Shasta was no longer afraid that the voice belonged to something that would eat him, nor that it was the voice of a ghost, but a new and different sort of trembling came over him. Yet he felt glad too. That's awe. We've lost that beautiful word awful, which means full of awe. Awful, terrible, inducing terror. Again, it's the numinous again and again. And in fact, just another paragraph, it says, when he finally sees the lion, it says, it was from the lion that the light came. No one ever saw anything more terrible or beautiful. Again, the two things going together. And he goes on to say, it's a good thing he lived so far south in Kilorman, that he never heard stories about the demon god in the form of a lion like they would have heard in Tashbaan, right? But his natural response is he gets off the horse and falls on his knees. I mean, which is what the Magi do when they come before the Christ child. It says they worshipped him and gave him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Right? I'll keep the gold and take the other stuff. And slips out of the saddle, and then this wonderful, and this is the cover of my book. I love this cover. You see that there? It's a really cool cover. It says, and actually, it may also be your cover too. It may be a reference to this. The last paragraph says, "The high king above all kings stooped towards him. Its mane and some strange and solemn perfume that hung about the mane was all round him. It touched his forehead with its tongue. He lifted his face, and their eyes met. Then instantly the pale brightness of the mist and the fiery brightness of the lion rolled themselves together into a swirling glory and gathered themselves up and disappeared. He was alone with the horse on a grassy hillside under a blue sky, and there were birds singing." Now, if the birds are singing, what does it mean? What time is it? It's morning, it's dawn. In other words, this has gone on all night. We could say that Shasta has wrestled with Aslan all night. Why do you think I say it like that? Like who? Jacob, very good. Jacob wrestled all night with the angel, and when he wouldn't let the angel go. Let me go, not until you bless me, right? And the angel touches his hip and it pops out. And I don't know if that's still true, but the Jews didn't eat that part of the meat. It says, and then the blessing that he gives him is he gives Jacob a new name. Say it. What's the new name? What name does God give Jacob? Israel, right? And his name is now Isra Aslan. Okay? Because Isra in Hebrew means wrestling, and El, you probably recognize that as a God. So Israel means he who wrestles with God. Shasta. And by the way, Jacob means he grabs at the heel, like a deceiver. So in a sense, Jacob means he who wrestles with men. But now he is the one who wrestles with God, the Israel, or Israel, which becomes the name. And so he's all night, he's gone into this. And then he wakes up in the morning. Was it all a dream? But it couldn't have been a dream. For there in the grass before him, he saw the deep, large print of a lion's front right paw. It took one's breath away to think of the weight that could make a footprint like that. But there was something more remarkable than the size about it. As he looked at it, water had already filled the bottom of it. Soon it was full to the brim, and then overflowing, and a little stream was running downhill past him over the grass. Shasta stooped and drank a very long drink, and then dipped his face in and splashed his head. It was extremely cold and clear as glass, and refreshed him very much. This is a medieval miracle. Lots of miracles. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called The Virgin Spring by Ingmar Bergman. It's one of the old classic movie. And at the end, and again, even in Chaucer and stuff like that, you'll sometimes see stories of these magical springs, like Our Lady of Lourdes or something that springs up. And the here it's proof that this really happened. This was a theophany of appearance of God, like the burning bush. And it leaves an after effect or an afterglow that God has been here. What did Moses look like after he got to look upon God? He's his back. Remember? Yeah. His face. And what did he have to wear? Wear cover, a veil. Right? Moses' face was veiled. People couldn't take it. Right? And he's done that. Wild stuff. Anyway, so again, all of these wonderful things that happen. Okay, now just a few more things. First, let's look at how Bree became a wiser horse. I think that's the name of the chapter. How Bree became a wiser horse. And look at page. It's wait a minute. Here we go. Let's start on page 292. How Bree, it's just in the beginning of chapter 14. Go in maybe a dozen paragraphs or something. Well, first it starts with something really funny that happens on the top of page 298. And Bree is sort of like, I'm in no rush to go to Narnia. Why are we rushing? Let's just stay here for a while. Anybody understand why doesn't want to go? If you remember this. No, I'm sorry, I said Chad. I mean Bree. So Bree doesn't want to go right away. And it's funny because you're wondering why, and Quinn realizes it. Look at the top.
Ashamed of himself.
Yeah, he's ashamed. He's ashamed. It's something else. Okay, the top of page 298. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, don't you see, ma'am, it's an important occasion, returning to one's own country, entering society, the best society. It is so essential to make a good impression. Not perhaps looking quite ourselves yet, eh? Quinn broke into a horsey laugh. That's like, those poor girls that start laughing and they end up snorting. Does that happen to you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I kind of imagine it. Anyway, it's your tail, Bree! I see it all now. You want to wait till your tails grow again. Your tail is grown again. And we don't even know if tails are worn long in Narnia. Really, Bree, you're as vain as that Tarkina and Tashbaan, by which she means Lazarly. You are silly, Bree, said Aramis. He's worried now. And I'm sorry, no guy should be too worried about his hair. There's something wrong with that. Shouldn't be too worried about your hair. Just let it go, man. Just let it go. Chris and I don't worry about our hair much. Neither does Lupe.
Only dream.
And yet I still have to get a haircut. We still, it's like, if I don't cut it every about 3 months, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I
It's unbelievable. Anyway, now, watch what happens, because this is an amazing scene. You are silly, Bree. By the lion's mane, Tarkina, I'm nothing of the sort. I have a proper respect for myself and for my fellow horses, that's all. Sometimes I wonder, little one, if you don't worry too much about your honor. Anybody identify that? Who does Aslan say that to? Ooh, that's a good question. We should end with like a Narnia trivia at the house or something
Say
like
it
that.
again.
Sometimes I wonder if you don't worry too much about your honor. Remember somebody that got his tail cut off? Reed Pacheep, that's what Aslan. And he heals him, but not because of your honor, Reed Pacheep, but because of the love that is between you and your people. And
Cut their tails off.
good, because they're about to cut their tails off, right? So they're going to need. Okay, now, Bree, said Aramis, I've been wanting to ask you something for a long time. Why do you keep on swearing by the lion and by the lion's mane? I thought you hated lions. Now, this is kind of funny. If you ever read medieval literature, which includes Chaucer Canterbury Tales, have you ever noticed the kind of swear words they would use? Not exactly swear words. They would say, by the blood, right? Or another way of saying is zwounds. You see that in Shakespeare's zwounds, right? That means by the wounds. I mean, weird. All these references are to Christ on the cross. They're kind of odd. Paula, do you have any Catholic friends who say, oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph?
Oh, yeah, me.
You do that yourself, okay? But that not as bad. But again, we don't hear it much anymore. But it's all linked to the crucifixions, by the blood, by the wounds, all that sort of stuff. They would say that, and that's what's funny about it. By the lion's mane, all of that is references to that stuff. And she says, "But I thought you hated lions." So I do. But when I speak of the lion, of course I mean Aslan, the great deliverer of Narnia, who drove away the witch in the winter. All Narnians swear by him. But is he a lion? Oh, no, of course not. Huh. All the stories about him in Tashbaan say he is. And if he isn't a lion, why do you call him a lion? Well, you'd hardly understand that at your age, said Bree, and I was only a little foal when I left, so I don't quite fully understand it myself. Okay, now it says, Bree was standing with his back to the green wall while he said this, and the other two were facing him. He was talking in rather a superior tone, with his eyes half shut. That was why he didn't see the changed expression in the faces of Quinn and Aramis. You recognize this? Well, I recognize it because I went to graduate school and I saw this all the time. You can go to seminary and see this, and it's exactly the way he describes it. Well, you know, when I was a young Christian, I believed in all those miracles, but as I've gotten older and wiser, I recognize that there's a deeper spiritual meaning. You heard that? That kind of arrogance, above, a little bit of a disdain on those people that actually believe that like God does miracles and things like that. And we're above that now. And oh, come now, you really think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John actually wrote those books? But again, have you ever seen that? Where they kind of go back and they close their eyes halfway, and they might do this. Not that there's anything wrong. That's a cool thing to do. But it's that sort of superior air that looks down. Right? I mean, Lewis just tags it perfect. Remember, he was in academia his whole life. He saw it too. That sort of stuff. And I'm very conservative, but I told my kids, I said, if you want to grow up and be a liberal, you can. But if you're going to be a liberal, you can't be a liberal that looks down on everybody as foolish. Be one, like Jimmy Carter. I didn't think he was a good president, but he was a good man. He does charitable work. He built. I said, if you want to be a liberal, that's your choice. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but please be the kind that actually really helps the poor and doesn't feel superior and look down on everybody. And if they want to do that, they can. But that's what bothers me. It's like I respect somebody that really works and works at soup kitchens and all. But sometimes that superior thing that I've seen, that's what drove me crazy when I was in college and stuff like that. And amazing. Anyway, so he says, so why doesn't he believe that Aslan's a lion? He explains it. No doubt, when they speak of him as a lion, they only mean he's as strong as a lion, or, to our enemies, of course, as fierce as a lion, or something of that kind. Even a little girl like you, Aravis, must see that it would be quite absurd to suppose he's a real lion. Indeed, it would be disrespectful. If he was a lion, he'd have to be a beast, just like the rest of us. Why, if he was a lion, he'd have 4 paws and a tail, and was for just as he said the word whiskers, one of Aslan's had actually tickled his ear. Bree shot away like an arrow to the other side of the enclosure, and there turned. The wall was too high for him to jump, and he could fly no further. Aravis and Quinn both stared back. There was about a second of intense silence. Then Quinn, though shaking all over, gave a strange little neigh and trotted across to the lion. Please, you're so beautiful. You may eat me if you like. I'd sooner be eaten by you than fed by anyone else. I can hear Amanda saying that. Coming up to that, right? You see Amanda. Dearest daughter, I knew you would not be long in coming to me. Joy shall be yours. And Quinn is the one that doesn't have too many flaws. The only flaw she has is what we would call a little bit of low self-esteem. And she's too nervous and easily put down and stuff, but she's really a very good character. Then he lifted his head and spoke in a louder voice. Now, Bree, you poor, proud, frightened horse, draw near. Nearer still, my son. Do not dare not to dare. Touch me. Smell me. Here are my paws. Here is my tail. These are my whiskers. I am a true beast. Aslan, I'm afraid I must be rather a fool. Happy the horse who knows that while he is still young. Let's stop there for a moment. There's 2 things going on here. One level is what character in the Gospels is Bree right now? Somebody, I think Paula mentioned his name before. Good. It's Doubting Thomas, right? What did Thomas say? Unless I feel the wounds. Put my hands in there, put them in the side, right? Have you all seen the great painting by Caravaggio? It's almost clinically accurate. And then they said he looked at dead bodies and stuff, and putting his hand into the flap there. So in one sense, he is Doubting Thomas, right? He needs to touch and make it real. But he's somebody else, okay? He's also what they called in the early church a Gnostic, okay? In the early church, there were 2 main heresies, right? And one were the Arians, and the other were the Gnostics. Now, the Arians were the people who taught that Jesus was a man, but he wasn't God. In other words, he was just a good preacher. Sometimes they even called him the Son of God, but he wasn't God the Son. Right? He was made. He was the best person of all, but he was still born. He wasn't eternal and fully God. Right? And they fought that a lot. And somebody wrote a great book called On the Incarnation by Athanasius, where he argues for that. And we still have that amongst us. A lot of people he's a good man and nothing else. But there was another heresy that may have been even more dangerous, And it sounds a little strange to us today. All right, if the Arians said that Jesus is man but not God, the Gnostics said he's God but not man. Now, what does that mean? It's weird. I don't know if you've ever heard this, okay? They believed that Jesus only appeared to be human. Sort of like when I got up this morning, I put on these clothes. But these clothes are not a direct, intimate part of me. At night, you take them off, you throw them in the hamper, right? They couldn't believe that God would take on human flesh because that would make him dirty. They saw flesh as inherently fallen, even inherently evil. And so Jesus only appeared to be human. And so they didn't even believe he died on the cross. And actually in the Quran, it says Jesus didn't die on the cross. It was an illusion. It was Judas. Because Muhammad didn't believe that a good man could suffer like that, be put to death. Right? And so, again, this idea, and now what does the word Gnostic mean literally? It's the Greek word, like the word agnostic. It means a knower. And Gnostics believed that we are not saved by Christ, by salvation. You're saved by possessing secret wisdom. They had like this esoteric wisdom and sayings and stuff that they could use. But they looked down on the flesh and they couldn't believe that God could become man. It would dirty him. Okay, do you see the connection here? How is Bree a Gnostic? What does he believe about Aslan?
Well, because he believes that he's really not alive.
Good.
Alive, and that's just sort of a fairy tale.
Good, a fairy tale. Good. It couldn't be. Because if he was alive, he would have to what? He'd be a beast. He'd have whiskers. He'd have a tail. He'd have all these stuff. That's disrespectful. How can you say God would take on a body? And it is pretty crazy. Okay? I mean, that's the essence of what's called the incarnation, in the flesh, literally, in the meat, the carne, right? So Bree, again, he's kind of superior. No. It's just I have a sort of mystical religion. I believe in the idea of Aslan and the power of Aslan, but he couldn't be a real beast. And so Aslan said, look, smell me. I'm a real beast. Okay? Wow. It's amazing. The incarnation is an amazing thing. We think of the sacrifice on the cross. What about the sacrifice of becoming a man to begin with? And poor, being a baby, right? So God became a baby. Couldn't even control his bladder for until he was at whatever age. And that sort of stuff. It's amazing to go through all of that indignity and things like that. So, and it's just an amazing scene. Okay. Happy the horse who knows that while he is still young. And again, remember, that's what Jesus says to Thomas. You believe because you see, but happy are those who believe without seeing. Right? That happy is the same word as the Beatitudes. Blessed are. It's that word. It's makarios in Greek or beatitudo in Latin. Happy are those. Or the human either. Draw near, Aravis, my daughter. See, my paws are velveted. You will not be torn this time. This time, sir, said Aravis, it was I who wounded you. I am the only lion you met in all your journeyings. Do you know why I tore you? No, sir. The scratches on your back, tear for tear, throb for throb, blood for blood, were equal to the stripes laid on the back of your stepmother's slave because of the drug sleep you cast upon her. You needed to know what it felt like. There are some critics that are troubled by that. They think it's too much, but it's not so much punishment as helping her to what? Understand. What is that phrase? You can't understand a man unless you walk 5 miles in his shoes. You heard that? I don't know who originally said that. I'm not sure who originally said that.
John Wayne.
John Wayne. Well, Pilgrim. Here we go. You needed to, yes, sir, please, ask on, my dear. Will any more harm come to her by what I did? Child, I am telling you your story, not hers. No one is told any story but their own. And then he disappears, and it says, they felt no inclination to talk to one another about him after he had gone. It's British people in general are a little bit more private about their faith. right? Americans are more, especially evangelicals, are more talkative about everything and stuff like that. But in England, they don't talk, and they both realize later on they know Aslan, and they're just a little bit shy, right? And don't talk about it. So, okay, let's look at one more incredible scene in this. This is page 306, Rabadash the Ridiculous. I love this scene. Oh boy. You still with me? I know it's a long haul. We'll get in there. I just hate to take a break because then I don't know what to do with the camera. You can't pause it. If you try to pause it, it will stop and you have to start all over again. So yeah, we'll press on a little more. We'll finish this and I'll just kind of give you an intro to get you thinking about the next one. Okay. Okay. Rabadash was jumping down and he got himself caught on a hook, right? And he's there kicking and screaming, right? And they're nice to him, and they try to be nice to him, but he refuses to be nicely treated, right? And they tell him, okay, page 306 at the top, it says, "Your Royal Highness needs not to be told," said King Loon, "that by the law of nations, as well as by all reasons of prudent policy, we have as good right to your head as ever one mortal man had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and the ill nurture, devoid of all gentleness and courtesy, which you have doubtless had in the land of slaves and tyrants, we are disposed to set you free, unharmed, on these conditions. First, that, curse you for a barbarian dog!" He doesn't listen. They give him so many chances here. We're going to let you go because you've had a bad upbringing. You don't know, gentlemanly behavior, right? And so we're going to cut you some slack. But he won't have it, right? A little farther down, "I hear no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers. Not one of you dare touch a hair of my head. Every insult you have heaped on me shall be paid with oceans of Narnian and Arkanan blood. Terrible shall the vengeance of the Tizrak be, even now. But kill me, and the burnings and torturings in these northern lands shall become a tale to frighten the world 1,000 years hence. Beware, beware, beware! The bolt of Tash falls from above." Does it ever get caught on a hook halfway down? That's a great one-liner. "Shame, Corin," said the king, his father. "Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you. Then as you please." All right, did any of you gentlemen, your father tell you that? Don't beat up somebody smaller than you. If they're bigger than you, you can fight. Ever told you that? Or did they tell you beat up the little guy? What's that again? Go for the leg. Never start a fight, but always finish it. That's a good one. But but he's telling him, no, don't. You're in the position of power. You don't bottom. And look at Lucy. "Oh, you foolish Rabadash." Next moment, Kor wondered. Remember that Shasta wondered why everyone at the table had risen and was standing perfectly still. Of course, he did the same thing himself, and then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them, though no one had seen him coming. Rabadash started at the immense shape of the lion, paced softly in between him and his accusers. "Rabadash, take heed. Your doom is very near." When Clinton walks in, we say that phrase. Are you scared?
Your doom is near.
Your doom is near. "But you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger, who has done you wrong? And accept the mercy of these good kings." So the merciful Aslan allows him some mercy. Right? Put aside your pride, your anger. You have no reason for it. These people have done you no wrong. They've shown you mercy. Then Rabadash rolled his eyes and spread out his mouth into a horrible, long, mirthless grin like a shark, and wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn how to do this if they take the trouble. Like that one, the one of his little tidbits. He had always found this very effective in Calormen. The bravest had trembled when he made these faces, and ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rabadash hadn't realized is that it is very easy to frighten people who know you can have them boiled alive the moment you give the word. The grimaces didn't look at all alarming in Arkanan. Indeed, Lucy only thought Rabadash was going to be sick. Right? See that? You don't have daddy to back you up anymore. Nobody's afraid of you anymore. So it's great. You've got to get at the bully there, right? "Demon," Demon! Demon! I know you. You are the foul fiend of Narnia. You are the enemy of the gods. Learn who I am, horrible phantasm. I am descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible. The curse of Tash is upon you. Lightning in the shape of scorpion shall be rained on you. The mountains of Narnia shall be ground into dust. Have a care, Rabadash. The doom is nearer now. It is at the door. It has lifted the latch. Wonderful language, like from the Song of Solomon. You know what I imagine Aslan saying here? No, stop, don't do it. That's a hard one. You get that reference? Can you get it? The kids keep doing stupid things one after another. It's like, no, stop, don't do it. Come on, that's Willy Wonka at the Chocolate Factory. Oh, you've seen it. By the end, Willy Wonka's just like, no, don't, because they give Mike TV, that kid, hey, look, Mom, I'm on TV. By the end, he's upset. But Aslan gives him chance after chance he's given. Right? Let the skies fall, let the earth gape, let blood and fire obliterate the world. But be sure I will never desist till I have dragged to my palace by her hair the barbarian queen, the daughter of dogs. The hour has struck. And Rabadash saw to his supreme horror that everyone had begun to laugh. Because even as he's talking, his ears went whoop, he fell on all fours and became a donkey, an ass, right? What is one of the scary, what's that? What is probably the scariest moment in all Disney cartoons?
Oh, Pinocchio.
Pinocchio. Have you seen Pinocchio? What are we talking about?
Yeah, when he was turned to a donkey.
Yeah, those boys, he just gets there with all the boys that are drinking and smoking and playing pool, whatever, all turn into donkey, and they're carted off, and that is a terrifying scene. Still, I mean, if you watch it again, it's terrifying. One of the kids, we watch him turn into a donkey in shadow and stuff. It's really, really artistic. Pinocchio was so artistic. All of his early ones. You have to see the 5 great Disney movies. It's first, it all started with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Then Bambi. I might be getting it's Bambi, Pinocchio.
Fantasia?
Wait, which one? That's a bit later. It's Dumbo, Bambi, and Pinocchio, and Fantasia. Those 5. And isn't it kind of funny? Those four movies, combined, have a shorter title than Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. All the others are one line. It's like Hitchcock movies. And then he didn't make money on those movies, except the first one. And then when he made Cinderella, that's when he changed over to the princess formula, which is wonderful. But those movies are not for kids, and we're for adults, and they're all...
No, they're not for...
They're radically different.
Kids.
Oh, man.
They were...
Although...
all the nice and happy was balanced by all the super creepy
Oh, man.
that scare you.
Dumbo, the first thing, we've got the workers that are making the tents, and I've watched it, I can't understand a word they're saying, but one thing they're saying is, we're going to go out and get drunk and have fun. It's really wild. Is anybody frightened by elephants on parade? Pink elephants on parade?
That was the whole acid trip.
Oh, yeah, it's just like, man.
The expanding and multiplying.
Oh, yeah.
That was the creepiest
amazing.
thing ever.
It's great. My kids
their
watch.
faces all multiplying and the trunks going back and forth.
My kids watched Dumbo when they were kids a lot. Because, of course, my son as a boy loved trains and elephants, right? And so, all aboard! Anyway, so he turns into, and look at, after the long paragraph, just as he's turning, he says, his voice lasts a little bit longer, and he says, "Oh, not a donkey, mercy! If it were even a horse, even a horse." What is it? What's the sound it makes? No, I'm not getting it. What's the sound? Bray. It's a braying sound. Come on, give it to us. Nah, he's not going to do it.
You got it.
He's going to do it. Because then Anthony will make a comment. Anyway, on the other side. So, again, proud to the last. Now hear me, Rabadash. Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass. I see you were afraid I was going to use that line. I didn't even think about it, but you were ahead. At this, of course, the donkey twitched its ears forward, and that also was so funny that everybody laughed all the more. They tried not to laugh, but they tried in vain. They can't do it. You have appealed to Tash, and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashbaan at the great autumn feast this year And there, in the sight of all Tashbaan, your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rabadash. But as long as you live, if ever you go more than 10 miles away from the great temple in Tashbaan, you shall instantly become again as you now are, and from that second change, there will be no return. So, you understand, when his acid shape falls away and he becomes a man again, where does that happen? Do you understand where he says this can happen? Yeah, at a feast, at a temple, in a huge public area, so everybody sees it, right? So he's not going to change back, so everybody's going to know he was an ass, right? And it says that because he couldn't go more than 5 or 10 miles away, that means he can't fight wars, right? And because he doesn't want anybody to get glory above him, he won't let anybody else fight wars, and so he becomes Rabadash the Peaceful, though behind his back, everyone called him Rabadash the Ridiculous, right? And if anybody did something stupid, they might say, I was another Rabadash. Now, I'll give you one more chance here, Clinton. Oh, I pulled a Homer. You're good at pop culture. I pulled a Homer. It's The Simpsons. You remember what happens? You remember? Okay, most of you know The Simpsons. Homer works at a, what do you call that? Nuclear power plant, yeah. And the nuclear power plant is about to, China syndrome. It's about to collapse. And, of course, Homer has no idea what to do. He's looking around, and just randomly, he pushes a button and stops it, right? Had no idea what he was doing. And so it becomes a new word in the dictionary. When you succeed by absolute dumb luck, it's I pulled a Homer. And I remember, I think it was Charles Barkley or somebody like that, Michael Jordan, maybe it was Michael Jordan. But anyway, they got him to give his voice, and in the scene, you see the cartoon, Charles Barkley, coming down, and he falls down, he hits the ground, the ball bounces, and goes in the thing, and he looks up and says, hey, I pulled a Homer. And they got the guy to do his voice, Just like, the baby, what was the little baby called? Maggie, yeah. She never speaks, but in one episode, she spoke, and her first word was father, daddy. And they got Elizabeth Taylor to speak that word. They brought her in just to say daddy.
It was like one of those touching episodes.
It was.
A nice tune.
It was great. Great satire and stuff like that.
120 episodes that just completed.
Oh,
120.
Yeah, because it's been 30 years.
I think so.
His longest running show on TV, maybe?
Yeah, I follow Yardley, who's who is it, Lisa? Is that the daughter's voice?
Oh, yeah. Bart is voiced by a woman, a female actress. I've seen. I can't remember her name. But, no.
That is like crazy. How long they've actually been?
What's that?
How long they've been?
Oh, I remember it because I've been teaching here 30 years, and I remember it when I was in grad school. So it's been at least 30 years, a little more. It's unbelievable. It still goes on and on. So, okay, maybe. Okay. I'm getting tired too. Let me just give you an intro to what to think about with the magician's nephew. Right? We are going to meet two characters, Uncle Andrew and Queen Jadis, right? Who will be somebody else in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And these two characters are very similar to one another because they fit, again, a certain archetype. One of them is kind of legendary, the other is kind of historical, right? And, okay, we've said before, we might have said this before, we'll say it again, okay? Marx, Freud, and Nietzsche. Crazy stuff, okay? These were all essentially atheist thinkers, and they all had different ways of thinking about religion, okay? Marx said religion was what? I wonder if anybody knows. Do you know the famous phrase? Dead. Oh, you're thinking of God is dead. Nietzsche.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah, my bad.
But religion is the something of the masses. I wonder if you've ever heard it.
Wasn't Marx the one who said that when he was growing up, his father, that they was some type of religion?
Oh, no, that was Freud. Because Freud was Jewish. Actually, Marx was Jewish too. But Freud...
And then when they moved to another town,
Right.
his father said that we are now Presbyterian or whatever.
Oh.
And the reason for that is because it helps out our business or whatever.
Maybe, because I just remember that Freud always remembered his father being sort of pushed off the street by a Gentile and not fighting back, and he always remembered that. It might have been that sort of stuff. But they were both secular Jews; they were not believers. But Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses, right? Keeps them all, down and quiet so they don't revolt or whatnot. Okay? Freud said religion is a wish fulfillment. Right? That it's just an illusion that we want it to be true. Right? But Nietzsche said something needs a little more parsing and figuring out. Nietzsche said, and by the way, Nietzsche does get some things right sometimes. He said, religion is a slave effort. What did he mean by that? Okay? What he meant by that is that people that are poor and powerless use religion to hold down the powerful people that should be leading society. Right? He called him an Übermensch. Okay? Mensch is the German word for man. And Uber, not like the taxi, but Uber means overman, over. So the Übermensch is the overman, or we more commonly hear it Superman. You ever heard the phrase the Nietzschean Superman? Right? Or the Nietzschean Oberman, or the Nietzschean Übermensch. Okay, what he meant by this is he said that, again, the people, the masses, use religion to stop the rich and powerful and intelligent people from rising up and being great leaders. It's almost like a kind of envy that holds people down. And by the way, I think there is some truth to that sometimes, okay? It's what I mean by Nietzsche, is a strange one. But he wanted an Übermensch. He wanted a strong leader who had the courage to rise above good and evil. That he would not allow himself to be held down by what Henry P. Doolittle calls middle-class morality. Do you know who Henry P. Doolittle is?
Yeah. Dr. Doolittle?
What's that? Wait, you said Mr. Dr. Doolittle?
I'm just kidding, that's a Dr. Doolittle.
Henry P. Doolittle is the father of Eliza Doolittle.
Yeah.
You know who Eliza Doolittle is? Ah, you don't know? You say?
Yes, that's on My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady, very good. My Fair Lady, based on a play called Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. And her father says, later on he gets money, and he doesn't want money because it's going to push him into the ranks of middle-class morality. And that's going to hold us down. And Nietzsche said he wanted a leader that had charisma and that had, you might have heard this phrase before, a will to power. That he was strong enough to rise above middle-class morality, to rise above good and evil, to assert his will of power and sort of take over and remake the world. And that's why some people blame Nietzsche a little bit for Hitler, because Hitler saw himself as an Übermensch. Right? Now, I will say, at least about Nietzsche, he wasn't anti-Semitic. I've read some of his books. Other things, he's problematic, but you can't really blame him for the Holocaust, per se. But you can blame him a little bit because he was looking for that strong, charismatic leader that would not be held down by schoolboy laws, right? Or Boy Scout codes. My son's an Eagle Scout. And he is the one, and in this, as you read it, notice how both Uncle Andrew, whom we meet early on, and then the witch, whom we meet halfway through, both of them feel that they are above the rules, that the rules don't apply to them. They cannot perform their task unless they can be freed from all these common rules. But here's the irony. They expect everyone else to abide by those rules. So what happens, if you've started, is that Uncle Andrew, he meets Diggory and Polly, and he fools Polly into taking a ring. And the moment she takes the ring, she disappears. And it turns out these are magic rings that take you to another world. But Uncle Andrew is too cowardly to actually go himself and risk whatever wildness is on the other side of the world. And so he fools the girl into taking one. Now, the only way to get the girl back is if somebody takes the ring and takes 2 homecoming rings and goes in to rescue her. And so he manipulates Diggory into doing it. But they have a conversation early on where Diggory says, I can't believe you did that. He says, oh, don't you lecture to me, you dirty little schoolboy, right? You know, people like me cannot be bound by the rules. We have to rise above them. Ours is a high and lonely destiny. We need to do this. But then, when Diggory is resistant or reluctant, then Uncle Andrew says, I hope nobody in my family will wear the white feather. Do you know what that means, to wear the white feather? It means to be a coward. It's an old phrase from the Victorian age. So he expects Diggory to live up to the moral code, what Lewis called the Tao, the universal moral code, but he thinks he is above it. And little Diggory sees right through him and says, he only thinks he can do whatever he wants to get whatever he wants, right? So watch that. But they also fit another archetype that's more literary, and that is that both of them are what's often called the mad scientist. What does a mad scientist do? Familiar with that phrase? It's a mad scientist do. You know, who's the most famous mad scientist in literature? There's a novel named Frankenstein, okay? And what is Frankenstein trying to do in that book? Create life. I'm going to find the secret of life, to destroy it, to create it again, to play God, as we would say today. And at first, he actually has good motives in the sense that he wants to free us from our greatest enemy, right? But he does forbidden things in order to do it. And what's one of the forbidden things he does?
Grave robbing?
Yeah, grave robbing, literally. He steals, he messes with bodies, he cuts them up, he puts them together again. This was a terrible thing. Oh, by the way, I forgot to bring it. By the way, was I mentioning Body Works here? Where you went to the museum and saw dead bodies? Yeah, well, I forgot to bring it. Maybe next time. I got a card in the mail that it's coming back to the museum. So it is there. Wait.
Bodyism.
What's it? Bodyism. So the mad scientist is seeking after forbidden knowledge, and both Uncle Andrew was seeking forbidden wisdom from the ancient city of Atlantis, and he even says, "It turned my hair gray, but I learned the secret." And we find out. You'll find out when you read that Jadis found something called the deplorable word, and she had to do terrible things to get it and pay a terrible price, right? What did Odin have to pay in order to hang on the one tree and gain knowledge? You know what Odin lost? And if you know your Norse mythology, he lost. You know, Sony.
Didn't he lose his? Did he lose his testicles?
I know. And we did, but
that was his father. No.
Oh no! He's thinking.
Chronicles, I'm thinking of Chronicles.
Yeah, you're thinking of Chronicles. Person who did that. Okay? No, he's right. Actually, Paula, you were in that class. We talked about that. Yeah, that was Kronos who castrated his father, Uranos. I remember. Getting kind of scared. You're like, okay, it's time to watch Game of Thrones again. But but that was a different one. But Odin lost an eye. He's blind in one eye. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of him with an eye patch and stuff like that. Oh my Lord! Anyway, so again, sometimes you pay a terrible price for that forbidden knowledge, and the mad scientist wants to begin by doing good for man, but ends up destroying everything. Right? Can anybody think of any other another famous mad scientist who wanted to remove the evil from man, the sinful nature? He's a member of the. What's that? Young Frankenstein. He's a member of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, Dr. Jekyll.
Hey, Dr. Jekyll, very good. Okay, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Right? Dr. Jekyll thinks that by drinking this potion, he can separate out basically our depraved side, our original sin. right? And that's good. But what ends up happening is that the dark side takes him over, right? Does anybody know who Captain Nemo is?
Yeah.
Okay, he's also in the League of Extraordinary. What now? What does do you understand what Captain Nemo is trying to achieve? If you've seen 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea,
Yeah.
what is he trying to achieve?
Horrible show.
That's what John Connery, wasn't it?
No, but Sean Connery wasn't Nemo. Sean Connery was.
He was in it though.
He was what was that guy's name? He's from King Solomon's Mines and She. It was H. Rider Haggard. I just forget his name. Oh, it'll come to me anyway.
I was distracted by the phrase.
Okay, what? Must,
Much detail.
I must have appealed to her maternal instinct. Hey,
That's so bad.
Lupe, are you really going to miss this next semester? We got to suck you back in.
I just take the class. What
There we go. Pressure, man. Pressure.
I'm done.
You got to put pressure on Moto and Kelly. That's your job. Although I know you're afraid of Kelly, aren't you?
Wouldn't you be? She's got guns.
She got these arms. Have you
She's
seen her?
got those. Dude,
I don't even have arms like that.
She should have been in the Terminator movie, man.
I like lift stuff all day. Or used to with my neck and stuff, but yeah. Man, that's why I don't have
Unbelievable.
guns anymore.
Unbelievable. So Captain Nemo is trying to achieve world peace.
Yeah.
But the way he's achieving world peace is by blowing up all the ships of war.
Yeah.
And by doing that, he's killing all these innocent sailors, right? So, again, the mad scientist goes too far. That would be like somebody, any movie about cloning, right? It's sometimes the mad scientist tries to clone and save people, and all he does is bring destruction. So, Uncle Andrew and Queen Jadis are both a comment on the Nietzschean Superman, but they're also kind of in fairy tale lore, they're more the mad scientist. And what's amazing to me is these villains are very complex, but Lewis makes it so we can understand it, so that we can see through it. Diggory's like the Emperor's New Clothes, right? Who sees through what the adults don't want to admit to, but he sees through. He speaks clearly, and sometimes the childlike innocence sees through. So kind of keep an eye on that. The two villains are very, very interesting in this novel, and I love this novel. This novel is also, I think, the most moving because it's almost autobiographical. Because Diggory's about 9 years old, which is the age C.S. Lewis was when his mother died of cancer. And they don't say it, but she clearly has cancer, and she's dying. Is there some way to save his mother? Maybe there's fruit from another world, from the land of youth, that could bring her back. So I think this is the most deeply thought. And I'll leave you with this thought. In Lewis's book, Surprised by Joy, which is his spiritual autobiography, when his mother died, this is what Lewis said: "With my mother's death, all settled happiness, all that was tranquil and reliable, disappeared from my life. There was to be much fun, many pleasures, many stabs of joy, but no more the old security. It was sea and islands now. The great continent had sunk like Atlantis." And isn't it interesting that we actually we don't go to Atlantis. Charn is a type of Atlantis, okay? And Atlantis is an archetype of the city that goes too far, that gets too big for its britches, that tries to build the Tower of Babel, right? So it's Babylon, it's Egypt, right? It's the ones that get too big and need to be taken down. So again, this is a complex one. It's actually the shortest of all the books, but has the most complex plot, which I think is kind of cool. So, all right, we made it. Yeah, like I said.